Hey, everybody. Welcome to Tea and Chocolate. It's been quite some time since I've been visiting with you and having a special guest today, and I'm so excited. His name is Kevin Oake. And actually, Kevin and I went to high school together. So if we sound a little bit familiar, that's the reason. And we're going to talk about his journey on sailing around the world. And I think that this is going to be a really inspiring conversation. And anything that you want to do, Kevin will perhaps lend you some courage today. So Kevin, you're a little bit dark again. Kevin, thanks so much for joining
me. In the sun for 18 months.
Pardon me?
I've been in the sun for 18 months.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the reason. Okay. Awesome. Okay, well, so thanks for joining me today.
You're more than welcome.
Okay, let's start off by talking about how you came up with this dream, or how this kind of fell into your heart space or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a dream. Back in 1984, Tracy and I, my girlfriend at the time, we were traveling around the world, and we ended up in South Africa, and we were in Durban. And we were out for a walk one night, and I noticed there was a boat from Canada there, and it was from Ottawa. And of course, I started thinking, how did that boat get here? What route did he take, and so on. So I just got this thing in my head that, wow, wouldn't that be cool to sail around the world? So it kind of percolated with me for a year or two. And at some point, within a couple of years, I guess, I said, before I'm 60, I'm going to take off and sail around the world. So it sat until I was at least 50. And then I didn't share it with a lot of people. It was in my head. It was on my little, pencil written bucket list, but I didn't really say a lot about it because I thought I had all kinds of time. A few people had heard about it, but anyhow, we get to 50, which was, well, it's almost 8 years ago for me now. And I started inquiring about it, and in 2016 I took a few lessons, and 2019 I ended up buying a smaller boat to learn on, and then I had a hand injury, and then COVID kicked in, and I started getting a little frustrated, and I thought, if I leave this thing, I don't want circumstances to drain my interest. So I kind of chased down a boat that I was interested in, or was introduced to. I didn't know much about it, except I had a report on the boat. So that boat was a Canadian boat, but it was registered in Canada, but it was residing in Mexico. So I tracked down the owners, who happened to be in Vancouver, and we had coffee, and one thing led to another. I went down to look at the boat in October and liked it, but I didn't know really a lot about what I was buying. I couldn't get a survey. I couldn't get anybody to look at it because of COVID. They wouldn't fly. And if they did, it was going to take weeks and money and everything else. So I kind of rolled the dice and went for it. And we kind of consummated a deal in November. And I packed things up in December and left January the 8th to take possession of the boat. And we moved it up to Puerto Vallarta. And through some good fortune, which I've had a lot of over the last 18 months, I ended up with 2 crewmates, and we took off. So that was how it started and how it began.
Okay. So that was January of what year? 2020?
2021.
2021. Okay. So up until, like, you obviously, before you hit 60 and then 50, your life obviously evolved, marriage and children and so forth. But how did you always have this still in mind?
It was in mind. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it. I think I probably hoped when I was in my 20s that I'd be able to retire or have the wherewithal to do something at 60.
Right.
But, I was in that hotel industry for 30 years. So I didn't really know. I didn't have a proper game plan. And then when I left the industry and became a mortgage broker or self-employed,
right.
Things not immediately crystallized, but within 5 years, I started thinking, what, if things continue the way they do or are, then maybe I can make this happen. And then it didn't. Well, it probably totally came together because my son joined me. And
wow.
Yeah, not on the trip, in the mortgage business. So he was my
okay, you're right.
He was my right-hand man, and soon became, totally able to manage it all. So he was on board. Both my kids were totally on board with the trip. I think my daughter was a little nervous, but in principle, they loved the idea. And so, yeah, I took off and was able to, sort of let my clientele know that I was leaving for a short period of time. Well, relatively short period of time. It wasn't a 2-week vacation, but
Right.
and most, if not all of them, I don't remember anybody being negative about it. Some people were sort of indifferent, but most people were totally encouraging me. And I left, and I didn't even know when I left, I didn't know if I was going to be able to have constant contact with my customers. And then when I realized it was going to be so spotty, I just stopped. I didn't want to muddy the waters. And so Ryan just ran with things for the last 18 months.
Right.
So,
Okay. So let's talk logistics here for a second. When you started like learning, how to sail, what was that feeling like? Did it come easy? Like, was it challenging?
well, the concept of sailing is pretty straightforward, you come to realize. I mean, in waters here, it's a little more hazardous because of the islands and rocks and shoals and everything else, not to
Right.
mention weather and currents and all the other stuff. But I took the first course and I tried to take it as late in the year as I could, because I didn't know if I'd get seasick. I didn't know if I would adjust to living on a boat in close
Right.
quarters and what have you. So the first course was double thumbs up. I mean, we couldn't even go out the first night because the wind was too bad. We had to wait till the next day. So we had a lot of rain, a lot of uncomfortable sailing for a first timer. But, I had to share a little bunk with a guy, and, we had to eat on board, and, the instructor was kind of harsh. He wasn't overly patient. But I loved it. It worked. I was comfortable standing on the deck. I was comfortable sleeping. The whole bit worked out. And then understanding how to work the winches and work the lines, that, was that was the learning curve more than anything.
Right. So you gave yourself how much time before you actually embarked on the journey?
Well, most would say not nearly enough. I would say probably not enough, but I didn't really give myself a timeline. I started in 2016.
Right.
I took 2 courses in. I tried to get it off so I could. I bought the boat in the spring of 2019. I had a hand injury that prevented me from going out a lot on my own, particularly sailing. I could motor the boat, but I couldn't sail it. So
Okay.
I had a friend that I met through the sailing community that he was on board every time I invited him out. He was a definitive yes or no, and 90% of the time he was yes. He was
Mhm.
always early. He was a former Canadian military guy, so he was totally organized and spot on, and he was a huge, huge help for me. But I realized everybody kept saying you need time, you need time on the water, you need experience. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to get it here in the closed waters around Vancouver.
Mhm.
And I thought, if I do a passage across the Pacific Ocean, say it's 30 days, which the first passage was, I thought I'm going to get a hell of a lot of experience doing that. And I don't have to worry about crashing into an island. I mean, I did if I was totally off course, but in the middle of the ocean, you're pretty good. So that way I could learn how to use the sails. I could learn how to just work the boat. And it's how it all happened. I just kind of jumped into it and did it. So
Okay. Um, so can you tell me, like, what was your route?
So I took possession of the boat in Zihuatanejo, Mexico, and then
Yeah.
we sailed at about, I think it's 325 miles up to Puerto Vallarta, and spent about 2.5 months there. I had some work done on the sails, and I was just trying to get myself ready, but I was doing a lot of socializing. You meet a lot of people in the sailing world. So I had a hell of a good time in La Cruz, Mexico for that 2 months. Again, got the sail work done. I had some railings put on the boat. Found crew, which is a story in itself, but we kind of got our head wrapped around what we had to do and got ready. And we got up, we left Zihuatanejo I want to say it was like the 28th or something of January, got up to La Cruz around, I don't know, the 5th or something of February. And we left on the 12th of April. And we went basically diagonally down the Pacific Ocean to French Polynesia.
Mhm.
And it was 30 days from port to port, which was interesting itself.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And where else did you go?
So we stayed, well, my daughter joined us. So the deal I had with these guys is they would fly back to Mexico once we got down there. So
Okay.
when we got down there, 30 days of COVID reaction worked against them getting back. So we had to wait. I think we had to maybe 5 weeks before I could get them a flight, because United was the only airline flying back up to North America, and they were going through Los Angeles. So I took them to the airport, I think day 2 when the flights opened up. And one of the crewmates is Canadian, lives in Mexico. They're both going to Mexico, but my Mexican crewmate couldn't get on the plane because he didn't have a transit visa. So now he's stuck with me. We thought at that point it was going to be for a short term until we got him the visa sorted out. So the closest we could get to getting a visa was making an appointment in Fiji, which is going to be our next destination. But my daughter joined us, or was joining me in French Polynesia for a month or so. And so the 3 of us had to share that trip together, and it worked out really, really well. My crewmate is an awesome young guy and just easygoing, and it worked out well. So we had a really good time, met lots of people through our islands that we went to and what have you. And so Brittany left, and about 4 or 5 days later, Joan and I left, and we made our way up to up over Bora Bora and across to Fiji.
Okay.
That trip, I think, was 15 days.
Mhm.
And had to quarantine in Fiji, and then I'm on a quest now to stay ahead of the weather pattern. So my goal was to get into the Indian Ocean by the end of September. And so we only stayed in Fiji a short while. They had a spike in COVID. They shut the airport down. The embassy shut down their in-person meetings.
Okay.
It wasn't easy to move around there. So we decided to just reprovision the boat and take off. But we couldn't, technically at that point, we couldn't stop anywhere between Fiji and Mauritius in the Indian Ocean, because
Okay.
Australia was closed, Vanuatu, all those islands that you would stop at were closed because of COVID.
Wow.
So we thought we provisioned enough to go for 50 days. But about 2 weeks in, we had a technical issue. Our chart plotter, which shows our basically our maps, it decided to pack it in. So I had a phone, which I had an app on there which told me where I was, but we made an emergency stop in Papua New Guinea, and that was a story again in itself, but it was a longer stay than was expected. I think we were there for almost 2 weeks. I was hoping to get in and out of there about 3 days. So the good thing is we didn't provision enough before we left Fiji. So we did properly provision in Papua New Guinea. And by the time we left there, I can't remember the exact dates, but from there to Mauritius in the Indian Ocean was 40 days.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
We got there with no big intentions of staying there a long time, because I was supposed to have friends meet me there. And because of COVID, they pulled the plug.
Mhm.
But then now we're in October at some point, and the race was to get across the Mozambique Strait to South Africa before the cyclone season hit. And we did it. Excuse me. But then we had a problem. We got to South Africa. My crewmate, being Mexican, requires a visa, and I totally misread the requirements on the South African website.
Mhm.
And ironically, so did 2 of the other officials that were part of our welcoming committee, if you will. So it didn't really detain them too much. I mean, we had no real intentions of going ashore until we got to Cape Town anyhow, but that took us about 2 weeks because of weather and what have you to get down to Cape Town. And then we pulled the boat out of the water and cleaned the underside and did some other repairs. We pretty much worked for 3 weeks until we were more or less done. And then I had another friend of ours met us in South Africa, or in Cape Town. So the 3 of us, we did a few day trips illegally. He wasn't supposed to leave the marina, but we rolled the dice that he wouldn't be thrown in jail, or I wouldn't be thrown in jail. And it worked out fine. So I forgot what that first question was that I just answered.
Well, I'm actually, before I get to other questions,
Yeah.
I'm just really curious about like the journey that you took. So now we're in South Africa.
Yeah.
Okay. And after that, where are you going?
So we left the middle of January and went sort of diagonal across the Atlantic Ocean. And our first stop was St. Helena, a tiny little British island in the middle of the South Atlantic
I love
Ocean.
that. Uh-huh.
That
Okay.
was, you ever want to go on a very neat location or a very
Yeah.
neat destination, go there.
Oh, yeah.
But
Cool.
yeah, we end up spending more time there because my friend that met us in Cape Town, he wasn't having fun with the ocean. So he wanted to leave earlier than was originally planned, which it was fine. It worked out okay because I decided at that point that I was spending way too much time chasing parts and people and trying to get things fixed, that I wasn't enjoying myself when we went to port.
Mhm.
So the original plan was to go up the Atlantic, into the Mediterranean, out around the British Isles, across the Atlantic, through Newfoundland, uh, Nova Scotia, and then down the East Coast, and then through the Panama Canal, January 2023. Anyway, we cut that out. So my friend Les flew home from St. Helena back to Ireland, and Joan and I carried on up to the northeastern tip of Brazil, another tiny little island called Fernando de Noronha. And we spent, well, back up to St. Helena, we probably spent 12 days in St. Helena and maybe 4 days in Brazil. And there was a story behind all that. I won't get into it, but we left there and went to Grenada. That was about
Oh, yeah.
14 days as well. And then we spent maybe, I think it was about 10 days there. I'd sort of given up the race at that point because I was out of sort of troubled waters.
Mhm.
And then we got to Panama. I think that was, like I said, another 14 or 15 days. And we had to wait for about 10 days before we could get into the canal. And then we went through, spent a couple days in Panama, and then started making our way up the Pacific coast. And we had no wind, so we had to do a lot of motoring. And the transmission gave out just as we entered Mexico. So the boat is currently sitting in a small little marina in southern Mexico. And I'm leaving Saturday to pick up a new transmission. And I'm driving down to the States to get that. And then at the end of October, I'm going to fly back down to Mexico. We'll install the transmission and then make our way up to Puerto Vallarta to complete the loop and put the boat up for sale. So that's the plan.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to get a visualization and also offer the audience a visual of what that journey was.
Yeah, and it's a pretty much a complete loop. I have an app that I use. It's called Predict Wind, and I was able to post every day, more or less a blog post of what
Okay.
happened the day before.
Okay.
And on that app, people can click the link and they can, I did it for family and friends. You can see exactly what our route was and, where we stopped and
Mhm.
where we were tacking and, crossing the equator where we had to zigzag because we couldn't find any wind. And
Mm.
it was pretty neat. A lot of my friends were like so on top of it. As soon as I pulled into a port, they knew I was going to be there and I had text waiting for me. So as soon as I got Wi-Fi, bing, 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 I had 3 or 4 messages. These guys welcomed me there. So it was
Right.
kind of neat.
So at each port and destination, right? It sounds like, there were challenges along the way, given that, COVID and that.
Mhm.
But you had this intention of seeing, obviously, when you got there, of seeing the country itself, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is what I envisioned wasn't exactly crystallized because we were restricted. COVID caused a lot of
I
grief.
see. I see.
And we didn't have a lot of time after we left French Polynesia. So I
Okay.
think if everything was open, everything being equal, and I wasn't chasing parts and people every time I stopped the boat,
Mhm.
I may have got stuck somewhere in the South Pacific for a season. I may have had to fly home for a few months and gone back to get the boat because it's such a beautiful place and you're meeting all kinds of amazing people that you don't really want to leave. But because every time we got to shore, it wasn't the whole COVID check-in stuff. I had hired agents in almost all the ports we were at, all the countries we went into, and they did a lot of the preliminary work for us, so it wasn't overly cumbersome. But
I
everything
see.
was closed. Like the Cook Islands were closed, Vanuatu, all those islands you would have hit going across the South Pacific, you couldn't stop at.
Right.
So
Right.
the upside for us is every time we got to a marina, there was always room. So,
Right. So what's it like to be out in the water?
very cool.
Yeah. God.
the first adjustment is sailing at night, and trusting your instruments,
Oh, God.
because you
Okay.
can't see, right? So you don't
Yeah.
know, well, you're trusting that your course is not going to take you into an island or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then you've got, we had AIS on our boat that reported other vessel traffic. And so you could set that range up. I think we had ours set to 5 miles. So if there was a freighter, a fishing boat, or anything commercial out there,
Yeah.
we would see it. But if another sailboat was coming our way with the same limited, we didn't transmit, we only received. So if another boat was coming towards us without transmitting, theoretically we could have hit them, but we had watch every night. So we did 3-hour shifts. So first shift started at 8, ended at 11. Second was 11 till 2, 2 till 5, and 5 till 8 again. So we were always on board. We wrestled with staying awake a lot of the times. I mean, because you're not off, almost every night there's nothing to really do except sit there and trust that you're not going towards any danger. But that's that leap of faith of trusting that you're not, again, going into danger because you set your course the right way. And I checked it pretty regularly when I was on shift. And before you went down, before it got dark, I'd usually dial it in a bit more to make sure there was nothing ahead of us. And if there was, we just made sure we were far enough away. And the truth is, we didn't move more than probably 60 miles during a shift, during a night, between 8 and 8. So when it was daylight, there wasn't much to worry about. It was just at nighttime when it was dark. So
Right.
like my screen now.
So throughout this journey, I mean, did fear kick in anytime?
Yeah, but there's levels of fear.
Yeah.
I mean, most people that, and I'd probably be one of them. Most people that have not or don't even have an interest in going out on the water.
Mhm.
You would get visions of movies like I forget that one with George Clooney, but you just get the ugly visions of your boat capsizing or something happened. I was never worried about that.
Okay.
Never really worried about my life, but we had some moments where, yeah, you're tightening your bum up pretty good because but again, I had no fear of really dying. I had total trust in the boat. The boat that I have, or we had, was rock solid and tough. So even in the rough weather, the rough seas and everything else, I didn't have a lot of fear, but it made me realize that fear is a little overrated. I think.
Explain.
Well, just what I did. I mean, most people here's an example of what I went through 6 months before I left, but maybe 3 months, because I didn't know I was going until about 3 months before I left.
Okay.
So you talk to people that have been sailing their whole lives, and maybe they've done lots of sailing in British Columbia waters, or maybe they've done a lot of lake sailing in the Great Lakes, or maybe they've sailed internationally. I don't know, but anybody that had not done an ocean crossing, but had always aspired to do it, almost every one of them to a person was kind of hesitant to give me a thumbs up to go ahead. You need to do this, you need to do that. You're not giving yourself enough time. And then everybody I spoke to that actually gone around the world on a sailboat, without even hesitating, they would say, go for it. They didn't even think.
Wow.
So again, I don't know. Those other people, if they, didn't want me to do it because they're worried about me, or if they didn't want me to do it because they had in their head, you had to do X amount of hours and so much training.
Yeah.
The reality is most of the hazards or tragedies that happen at sea, they're happening to well-skilled sailors. So it's not just people that have never sailed before. It's happening to people that have, got years of sailing experience and countless hours. So, there was a leap of faith because, I'm out in an ocean. There's all kinds of things. And everybody talks about the depth. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's 50 feet or 4,000 feet. It's water. Like if you go over the side, you're probably not coming back. Okay. So that was the only thing that I had to be concerned about, is not going off the side of the boat.
Right. Well, the depth would matter to me. I'll tell you that right now.
What difference does it make?
Well, I don't know. I mean, just this idea.
What I mean.
Pardon me?
So that's what I mean. If you think about it, your natural reaction is, oh my God, I can't do that. But when you're
Yeah.
out there and you're not even thinking about the depth of the water because it's got no bearing on whether you're going to live or die, it's
Okay.
not that big of a deal.
So to me, it sounds like you had to have a pretty strong mindset.
Yeah. There's a lot of my stresses were coming from frustration, communication frustration, things breaking.
Okay.
But the longer we went, the more I started realizing that, you know what, it's part of the deal. Even when we lost the chart plotter,
Right.
I thought, I didn't even react. I looked, okay. And I thought, what did they do 20 years ago before they had GPS? And
Right.
so
Yeah.
I said, I know where I am in the water because I had my position there. I didn't have paper charts. But I knew what direction I was going. I knew where I was, so I didn't worry about it too much. So I let a lot of things roll off my back. But whenever I sort of lost it, it was usually just out of frustration of things breaking. But I remember coming into Panama and all of a sudden, the sail blows out. So the whole sail ripped from one side to the other. And
Right.
again, it happened on my shift right before the Jonah came up, and I said, got a bit of a problem. He goes, what's that? I said, look, and the big tear in the sail. So we kind of just, oh, well, just deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you end up doing. But yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff. I'm trying to be more and more less reactive to things.
I understand. Sure.
But you know what? I wasn't back here for 2 days when I was starting to get worked up again, because day one, I got a parking ticket. Day two, I not only got a parking ticket, but I got towed. And when I flew home from Puerto Vallarta through Seattle, was supposed to come into Vancouver. The flight into Seattle was, I think, pretty much on time, but the baggage handlers took like 40 minutes to get the bags out of the plane. And when you're I had to clear customs in Seattle, and then I had to recheck in. And the ticket agent I ended up with, I swear he was a trainee. His people skills were not evident. He says, you're too late. You missed the flight. I said, look, 3/4 of the people who are on that flight are on the next flight. And I was the first one off the flight. So you're going to have a whole bunch of people are going to need rooms if that plane is not delayed. And anyhow, at the end of that night, I went and rented a car because I had plans the next day in Vancouver. So I drove home from Seattle like 2 a.m. But that's how my return ended up. So I'm getting amped up with car rentals, car returns, my car getting ticketed and towed and everything else. And then I realized I'm back in town. But I'm trying just to let it roll off my back, because you can only control so much. I can't change what's already happened. So
yeah. Do you think this whole journey and experience was it full of like life lessons for you?
Yeah, probably a lot more than I can
Realize right now.
Off right now. But I think as time goes on, there'll be things that I'll definitely, I benefited from it personally. I'm sure.
Right.
Maybe not even me, maybe my kids as well.
Oh yeah, this isn't just about you. I mean, the way we're all connected to each other.
You told me.
I mean, the way that we're connected to one another. And that was going to be a question about kind of like letting go, like this idea of like letting go all the time, friends, family, material possessions, right? You were gone away for a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And that to me takes an incredible amount of courage and trust. That from an outsider.
Or I know foolishness.
Oh, yeah, but we are foolish.
Yeah. You know what? I had this thing in my head, and I did tell a couple of people. I didn't tell a lot of people, but I opened my mouth, whatever it was, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I kept reminding myself, if I don't do this and I get to be whatever age I get to be, that I can't do it again. I'm going to be pissed off. So, not all my stars aligned. I put some money away. I spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
My son had to cover me. I rented my house. I got lucky with that. So a lot of things, good things happened out of it. But yeah, I had to walk away. I haven't talked to all my clients yet, but hopefully they're going to come back to me. I'm hoping that half of them don't even realize I was gone, but I'll find that out over the next few weeks as I start reconnecting with everybody. But yeah, you got to deal with stuff. I had to get storage lockers and deal with vehicles and stuff. But fortunately, I got enough friends that stepped up, and
They like you.
when I came back, I had rooms offered to me and couches offered to me and houses offered to me. So I've been okay since I've been back. It's just been a little unnerving because I'm not stable right now. So
Yeah.
but
Well,
that's all going to evolve.
yeah. Yeah, I guess, transition is always, sometimes it feels a little funky. We kind of want to be somewhere like right now kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah. So what surprised you, like about yourself or about, I don't know, the world at large, like when you went out there on the water, whatever, like what were some of the things that surprised you?
Surprised.
Maybe it's
Maybe that
yourself.
the world is messed up everywhere, politically.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I just think that, it takes South Pacific as an example. I mean, they still a lot of ways live traditionally.
Mhm.
Fiji is an example. You've got an amazing culture there, and but you've got government policies that get put into play, and the layers of government that have to impose them, whether it's immigration, customs, port control, health, all those layers,
Mhm.
they didn't seem to get it. And it makes sense given that COVID was a new thing. But I was surprised. I mean, I've traveled enough over the years. I traveled for a year around the world when I was 19, and I'm used to getting that, Canada, wow, what a great country, right? Your healthcare system, this and that and the other.
Yeah.
Well, this is the first time I've had more people say, what the hell is going on with your government? What the hell is going on with this and that? And they don't even know about the healthcare system. Coming home, that was the first shock I had, was what the hell? This thing is 10 times worse than it was when I left, at least from my experience the first month I got home. So,
Yeah.
what goes on around the world, what surprises me. Yeah, there wasn't anything major shockers. So,
No.
but the one thing that was consistent with almost all the people we met,
Mhm.
most of them, if not, well, most of them were in the boating community. Amazing people, whether
Mhm.
they were South African, whether they were Mauritian, wherever they were from, they were just very, very good people, and they can't do enough to help. So that was a blessing as well.
Nice. Yeah,
No,
totally.
yeah, people in
Well,
general are very, very giving and caring.
yeah, I think that, I guess, in lieu of what you just said about government overreach, I guess, if you want to call it there, that it's good to be out in the world to see that humanity is what it is,
Yeah.
and that's the truth of that.
I was getting emails from people here asking me, how crazy is it where you are? They were just,
Yeah, yeah.
one was a South African family and I was in South Africa. They want to know how bad it was down there. I mean, that country's got its own issues, but yeah, it's the layers
Right,
of government. The
right.
communication is weak.
Now, when it comes to the traditional values that you noticed, did you feel that was a benefit? Did you see that that was a good thing, or?
It's a good thing. Well, family was it. Like, you go to French Polynesia. Matter of fact, I had a problem with my foot, and I kind of knew what it was, but I didn't really want to admit it because I had the same problem when I was in Mexico. But I go to this doctor on a Monday, and he
Uh-huh.
was a French guy. He was from France. And we start chatting, and he goes, he says, every Monday I have a lineup of men outside my office. Goes, and I know where he's going with it, right? He goes, Sunday is family day here. So Sunday is barbecue and beer. So all the men eat, they just pig out on barbecue and they drink a whole whack of beer. Well, they get gout the next morning and they go to the doctor. So I had gout in my foot. And so he prescribed some anti-inflammatories and gave me a list of things I shouldn't eat. So, and that just made me think of the whole family thing. But
All
French
right.
Polynesia, heavy on family. Fiji, of course, is heavy on, everywhere was heavy on the family component.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I would say it's missing here, but it's not as day-to-day as what you see. Mexico, amazing. Mexicans are just so loving of family, and they communicate and they spend time and everything else. So that was a big.
Do you think that change that you noticed with family is in the recent years, or just overall you've seen the difference?
Up here?
Yeah.
I think it's just the race, right? Like, I'm in the mortgage industry, so I'm pretty close to the
right.
The real estate side of things. So, that goes up and goes up and goes up, and the government puts rules in, and, the rules aren't helping young people get in. So they've got to work harder and harder and harder. So, you and I both remember, our mothers probably didn't work. I mean, my mom didn't.
Yeah.
But how rare is that now to find, one working parent? So I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, sports. I know what I went through, and I only had one kid that really was into sports. I've got a brother with 3 kids, and they're into like 3 different sports. So it's nonstop. But you need to have that. You need the money to pay for it, and I think that creates the void because people are too tired. The geography in Vancouver doesn't help either, because everybody's got to move way further east. So if you grow up in Burnaby and your kids are now living out in Langley, it's not as simple, or living in Chilliwack or wherever they might be. So I think we deal with a number of different things, but I think the stresses that we deal with in the race, in the first world, our problems are first world problems, and we create a lot ourselves. And broken families, it's very, very common. I don't think it's as common down there, and maybe they're just a little more patience with things. I didn't get into those conversations too deeply, but it was very clear that family was, everybody was close. Cousins and aunts and everything else.
Well, I think this is what, part of traveling does, right? It gets you to see like a bigger scope, and you become much more worldly and empathetic.
Yeah.
That's an important thing. So you went to some really awesome places.
Yeah, not enough, but a lot.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You have another turn at it, right? Maybe you'll.
It's not in the cards right now, but I'm. Then who knows? Maybe within the next 10 years, I might do something, but it won't be ocean crossings. I might end up in Fiji for a season or 2, but.
Right. Okay. Well, you know what? I just want to kind of end off by saying that, if there's anybody that wants to do something quite grandiose as you've just completed, I'm thinking that you feel a sense of contentment.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if everybody has a bucket list.
Right.
I do.
Yeah.
And the bucket list is actually my new favorite movie after Forrest Gump, or before, I'm not too sure.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, 60 is creeping up, and I'm not known to being way ahead of schedule usually.
Okay.
So to take one of the, I'll call it the biggest item on my list in terms of time and probably expense, to have it ticked off it is a good feeling. But I've had more people comment like you have, like, how in the hell would you do something like that? And it's not that difficult. And that fear factor thing is, as I said, I think it's overrated. A lot of things we're scared to do. That fear should not be put at the top of the list. It's always fun to do something risky, but everything isn't, live or die. And
Right,
you know what, even if it was, um, and I had this, I mean, I had to think about all this stuff before I left, right?
right,
Because
right.
my kids, my daughter particularly was a little concerned that I wasn't going out there with enough safety on my mind, but I dealt with my will and all the things that I wanted dealt with because I didn't know, because
Right,
I'd never done it before.
right.
But here I am back, and I was very fortunate. I got amazing luck with the crewmate I had. We didn't have any ugly storms. Even if we did, I don't even think I'd be that worried because the boat would have kept us fine. But again, I learned all that as I was doing it. So if you assess things and don't do them because you're scared, um, I don't know. I just hope if anybody does not do what they wanted to do, I just hope they don't regret it. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like it was, it'll just, I think that, these things always kind of prepare us for the next thing in life.
yeah, and I don't have anything major right now. I mean, I think I'm going to be a grandfather within a year, so I kind of look at myself like
Okay.
doing a lot less things that I won't be away for long periods of time. But I
Yeah.
don't know if you've ever read this. I read it a long time ago, but it was a survey. They followed, I don't know, 50 people from the age of 40 or 50 years until their death. And they asked them all the same question. And the one thing that ranked highest in terms of what would you do different,
Mhm.
take more risks.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure.
I tried not to be a scaredy pants. I want to do something. I don't want fear to be the reason I don't do it, but
Right, right, right.
oh,
Well,
that's
if,
me.
yes, and so if someone said they wanted to do something, what kind of advice would you um give them?
Well, just look into it and weigh it
Go
out,
for it.
and take half of the fear, split it in half at least.
Oh, okay, there you
But
go.
just
That's cool.
look into it. Like, don't just yeah and
Yeah,
shake your head. No, look into it. Look at and weigh it out. Make a list. What's good, what's going to be bad, and what's the risk and what's the reward.
right, right.
Um, yeah, it's fulfilling to say the least. My venture cost money, but again, it's money. I'm not taking it with me. And I've had enough people in my sphere over the last 4 or 5 years, younger than me, slightly older than me, um, whether it was accidents or health, have passed away. And
Mhm.
that was another reason I forced this. I thought, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to get stricken with anything. I don't know if a car is going to hit me. I don't know if I'm going to get struck by lightning in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, but
Right.
um, I want to I want to do it. Like if it happens when I'm gone or when I'm doing it, then you know what? I died doing what I like. So
Yeah. By the way, is freedom really important to you? Like to
we,
feel free?
yeah, I'm not one, I don't like walls. I like to do what I want to do. And I mean, rules even, I don't
Yes.
like
I,
rules.
yeah.
So, but that's me. I mean, some people aren't comfortable doing that stuff. I don't mind it. Especially if I don't believe it. I'm not a total, renegade, but, yeah, freedom is, you have to be free, even if you're in a relationship for that matter. I mean, you've got to
Mhm.
give the other side enough slack that they can, flap their wings, and we all deserve the same. So,
Mhm.
but I happen to be a little freer than I plan to be because I'm on my own right now. My kids are adults, but um, so that allows me to do a lot more without a lot of major consultation. But yeah, I mean, we were born to be free.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I think, by the way, I think that there's a book in you.
Is there?
Yeah, because I don't know if you, whatever, it's probably not on your bucket
There might
list.
be a memoir for my
Okay.
kids and grandkids and
Well, there
family.
you go. Well, because I've read some of your posts, and the way you write, there's a lot of sentiment in your posts. There's a sentimental tone to it, and so you connect to humanity quite easily, and you really go in to say this is what's really important. That's what that to me. This is always your basic message. When I was just kind of reading your posts and that.
Yeah. Well,
Little feedback for you.
it doesn't need to be difficult. Things need to be simple. And I think if you've got that
True.
bend on it, then it's fine. But you know as well as anybody that you can make things difficult if you want.
Mhm.
But
Oh, I'm good at that. Anyway.
no, I'm saying
Yeah.
the energy that's spent on going that way is
Yeah.
wasted. So
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time and sharing your journey, and congratulations. It's been
thanks,
wonderful
Lauren.
chatting with you.
Good to see you and talk to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Too. Okay, everybody. Thanks again for joining me on Tea and Chocolate today. We'll see you next time. Take good care of yourselves.